Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar on communicating the value of post-secondary options to high school students. I'm Edith Juguna, and I'm the director of the Success Network. So our goal is to support communities to increase meaningful and equitable post-secondary attainment. And when we talk about meaningful, we want to ensure that students are pursuing goals that lead to a family-sustaining wage. And when we talk about equitable, we want to ensure that we're reaching students who are farthest from opportunity. And we offer a number of supports to leadership communities and the field as a whole. We share best practices and foster peer-to-peer learning, such as today's webinar. We provide technical assistance on a variety of topics, from pathways to data, and we seek funding, which we offer to communities to implement their goals. Then we gather and curate critical data, and you can check out our website on our dashboard on our website where you can learn more about that. And today we are really fortunate to be joined by Dr. Stacy Stover from the Michigan Department of Education and Janine Hatum from the Michigan College Access Network, who have deep expertise on this topic. And so, Stacy, I will kick it over to you now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and introduce myself and then transition to my colleague, Janine Hatum, who is going to begin the presentation for you. So I'm Stacy Stover with the Michigan Department of Michigan Department of Education. I work with the Early Middle College Unit in the Office of Career Technical Education. And one of the benefits of this work has been a great partnership with the Michigan College Access Network and my colleague and friend, Janine Hatum, who I will transfer over to.
Thank you. And thank you, Edith, and the whole network for inviting us here. I'm so excited to be with you today. Coming at you from Michigan, we are the Michigan College Access Network, a statewide nonprofit, and we focus on making sure that students have access to post-secondary education, really emphasizing the statewide systems that exist. So I wanted to start with just setting the context for you. Michigan does not have a statewide higher ed governing body, does not have an authority. So everyone is very localized here from the higher ed and K-12. We also have a great relationship with the Department of Ed as our network. So we do not do any at Michigan College Access Network, any direct student service. We focus on the people that support the students. And we really try to align our work with the goals and the strategies of the Department of Education. Most of the work is done in very localized control. Even within our school districts, the high schools, the middle schools have a lot of local control. And we do have higher ed associations, just like you might have with the financial aid department. The higher ed post-secondary institutions work together. So that is just a little kind of context for you to think about when we're talking about Michigan specifically. So I wanted to share this with you, and you can see Illinois is represented just like Michigan. In the country at large, this shows the percentage of jobs that require the workers with some post-secondary training beyond high school. This is from Georgetown University, and it shows that by 2031, 69% or more of the jobs will require post-secondary training, which means our work together is so important, especially when it comes to college access and college and high school opportunities. So you can see Illinois and Michigan have both the 69% or above jobs. And many of you have seen this in your own context. It's even more in some of the high wage, high demand jobs. So in Michigan, we have a goal, a statewide goal, and this was created by Governor Whitmer, and it was alongside of the nation along with the Lumina Foundation, decided to put together a post-secondary goal, an attainment goal. So in Michigan, by the year 2030, we our big kind of North Star is that 60% of our working age people, citizens, will have a post-secondary certificate or college degree. And we know that this is important because it will close the gap of employability and make sure that every Michigan resident has opportunities to earn family-sustaining wages. Right now, currently, we are at about 50%. So we know that this is important because we have a decrease in college enrollment. Like, this is probably, and I know most likely, a national thing. So the trend is there is a decrease in the students that enroll directly in college, and that leaves a decrease in the attainment, and again, the gap in the skilled workforce. So we know, and we have found, that dual enrollment and early middle college students outpace their counterparts in college enrollment and college completion. So therefore, our focus is on really how do we get students to understand the benefits and schools of these programs. And when you look at the data in Michigan, and we see that 76% of dual enrollment or early middle college students enroll in college within 12 months. And this is compared to 55.9% of those who did not. And when we refer to early middle college, we're referring to a program that is a 13th year in the high school, where students are continuing in the high school, but also engage in college credits during that 13th year. And then 44% of our dual enrollment and early middle college students that enroll directly in post-secondary end up getting a degree or certificate within 4 years, compared to 21% of those who do not. So we know it pays off. And CTE, we know, is an access pathway. It's not an attainment pathway itself, but students who are in CTE enroll at college at higher rates. So we know that CTE is also a proven strategy for post-secondary enrollment. So here we are. We know that we have this goal of 60% by the year 2030, and that's 60% of 25 to 64-year-olds having a degree or certificate by the year 2030. But we know that accelerated pathways, college and high school opportunities will help actualize this vision for Michigan. So our goal is, how do we think about increasing access, enrollment, and completion of these pathways for our high school students? And when we say accelerated pathways, we're focused on earning a minimum of 15 college hours. So early college, college and high school, 15 hours. And so that they can seamlessly do some transitioning into any associate, certificate, or bachelor's program. And then make sure that they have these authentic college experiences at little or no cost. And the ways in which schools, much like in your schools, districts, you can do this by dual enrollment, the early middle college program, and career and technical education opportunities. So I wanted to just break down a little bit of the pathways that we offer, and you might offer similar or same or similar pathways in your context. Early middle college students are able to get up to 60 transferable college credits, and those outcomes lead to either an associate's, a professional certification certificate, or a MEMCA technical certificate, or a registered apprenticeship. Dual enrollment, our law in Michigan states that students have the opportunity to take up to 10 college classes or 30 credits for free. So that is a state legislation that is in our laws. Some schools flaunt this and some schools don't. So I just wanted to bring back that idea of local control. While it is a right of every student, many students don't know that that is their right. And then CTE, we have students that are enrolled in CTE courses or students that are enrolled in programs. Our completers is where you complete the entire CTE program, and there's an opportunity for 378 statewide industry recognized credentials. So here's what we thought about when we were talking about in Michigan, this great law that we have, this great opportunity to have college and high school, free college for students. Why aren't students taking advantage of this? And so we thought about these three pieces. If we make sure that statewide policy is improved, and I can just briefly talk about that expansive and intentional communication efforts are our focus, and that there is strategic program enhancement, then we will address some of the barriers that happen because of that already exist in this college and high school pathway work. One of the things that I wanted to highlight is in Michigan, sometimes in some districts, the funding is limited for schools to offer dual enrollment to students. Although it is their right, the funding goes to the college, whereas for that particular course, that particular student. So that can be a disincentive for some of our high schools to be sending their money to colleges, whether or not it's in the best interest of the student. Some of them have some deep challenges with that. Another thing is our eligibility is a little strict when it comes to many of the students having to have certain test scores in order to be eligible. But one thing I really want to talk about, that the focus of today, is this idea of awareness. We found that there is while we tried to do it's in the legislation that by March 1st, every student has to be told that dual enrollment is an option. Now that in some schools ends up being a line in a newsletter. It might be in a quick email to parents, and some do some really intentional outreach with students. So it varies across schools and across districts. So we wanted to we know that the other pieces might take longer to really address, but this awareness piece is something that we could really focus on right away. So just to give you an understanding of where we sit, here's some of our data. And I want to just highlight the dual enrollment data is 3.5% of our students. And while we have offerings in every county, in 842 districts, and we have 97% completion rate for dual enrollment courses, there's still only 3.5% of our students that are doing dual enrollment. So we found that to be a really, really big challenge. And if you look at the EMC, we are really proud that we have every county served in the EMC offerings as well. But we know that there is also room to grow that program. So that's where kind of we started, is thinking about what is our current reality, what is our baseline, and how do we know if we really need this. So this is the data we got. So that's why we're focusing on this idea of awareness. And we did this, and you can see on the next slide, we did this by really focusing on the idea of why aren't students choosing to take these courses. So we came up with what we call sensing sessions, empathy interviews, and focus groups. And the focus groups were parents, counselors, and students, all in different kinds, separated. And we heard from all of them, and what the message was clear. Counselors say we give students information. Our school gives students information. We send out information, but students and families don't hear and don't get the information. So there was a big disconnect on people think they're giving the information, the receivers aren't getting the information. Families said that the reason their students are enrolled in dual enrollment is because they heard it from someone else, from a friend's parent. So word of mouth. A lot of times too is the parents who are connected to the school, very connected, whether it's like Dr. Stover, who might have a student in a school, knows how to navigate it, can experience it different than somebody who doesn't. And that is just, she can explain kind of her own experience with that later. Counselors definitely depends on the comfort level of a counselor to navigate all of the dual enrollment options, especially newer counselors. It was hard to navigate. And then administrative buy-in was really critical. So having a voice, collective voice to say AP, dual enrollment, IB, those college and high school opportunities are critical to our students. And then the students, again, they're hearing this from other friends, they're hearing this from a teacher. And so it is very much ad hoc, and there wasn't a real big system aligned to the college and high school opportunities. So from there, we took what we heard, and we also took what counselors asked for. And Dr. Stover is going to talk about what we did.
Well, good morning, everyone. This is a link to the toolkit that we developed, and I want to pause and recognize and thank the Accelerated Ed program that is what led to us developing this work. It was a Bill and Melinda Gates initiative that funded the Accelerate Ed project and that allowed us to develop the blueprint that really helped us to analyze our data, do the focus groups, and come up with a cohesive plan for our state on how we would address some of these challenges. So that's the foundation that brought us together. And as part of that project, we had an opportunity to apply for a grant. It was a $50,000 grant from the Gates Foundation. And as part of that grant, we could say a project that we wanted to work on. So after looking at the feedback from our empathy interviews and our data, we realized that we wanted to come up with a communications plan for our state to help with some of the challenges in communicating dual enrollment, early middle college, and CTE options, or what we also sometimes are calling college and high school. So that's what the grant was for. And that's what the second half of our presentation is going to be about, is showing you that toolkit. Our thought is that if that's something that you're interested in as a state, we'll give you some tips and ideas for how we did that as well. So hopefully by now you've had a chance to scan the QR code and see the toolkit. And I'm going to walk you through it, and we'll allow plenty of time at the end for questions. So this is an overview of the first page of the toolkit. And what I might actually do at the end as well is I might screen share myself and actually walk you through it a little bit. Sometimes I find it easier to show it to you guys that way. But this is the initial piece, okay? So the initial communications toolkit, you can see, has a lot of links embedded in it. And it allows our schools to choose what format they're using, because again, with local control, some of them are Google, some of them use Word, some of them use Canva. So this marketing firm that we worked with helped us to put it into each one of those different formats. And you can see in there that if you could go back one, Edith, I'm going to go through that a little bit more too. Back one more slide too.
Yep, sorry.
So you can see here that they have really a lot of different resources. That's why I said at the end, I'm going to screen share and I'll walk you through it. But there's a preferences worksheet, and what the preferences worksheet and the preferences form, what they do is they show, and the comparison worksheet, they kind of show how those three types of college and high school options, both dual enrollment, early middle college, and career technical education, compare, contrast. Because one of the things we found is people were confused and they didn't understand, well, what's it going to look like if I do early middle college versus what does it look like if I do dual enrollment or CTE? So that's really the intent of those documents, is how are they different? And they're laid out. One is like a, comparison sheet, and one is like I want to learn this way. So it kind of gives the school and the learner different options for exploring what is the best fit for them. The next document, called the overview documents, are an individual document for each of those three college and high school options. So there's one for career technical ed, there's one for dual enrollment, there's one for early middle college, and they explain in depth about each of those different types of learning resources for students. Then there is a note for the schools because of the challenge that we had found that while they're required to promote dual enrollment, sometimes it's not always promoted as heavily as we might like. So there's a reminder about that. And then the next one is a note that there's a video coming soon, which we literally just got. So we're going to be adding the link to the video to show them here's another technique, another resource they can use to promote. And then lastly, there's a PowerPoint. And one of the reasons we did all this is that our schools, probably, I'm assuming like Illinois, are heavily taxed, and our counselors have like 50,000 jobs that they're doing at a time. And so trying to put together a communications piece to explain these different things, or a PowerPoint to do at like senior nights, or, well, actually, we hope that they're doing it earlier, maybe like sophomore or junior nights, or during, information sessions, was just one more thing that they might not have time to. So the whole point of this is these things are developed, they can take them, and then they can adjust and personalize them for their individual schools. So that's kind of the idea behind it. So we'll look at it a little bit more now on the next slide. So this really is the continuation of that, which shows to them, how do you use this? It says, this is how you can use these documents. And what they do is they take and they save a copy of it for themselves. And then, like I was saying, they can add their own logo, their own contact information. If their school doesn't offer early middle college, because that's a thing that a school district in Michigan has to choose to offer. So if they don't offer it, they can just delete it from that document. So they can change and personalize these once they download their copy. Okay. So as I was just saying, these were developed to help with the capacity issues. And we hope down the road to have these available in other languages. That's something that we requested from our marketing firm that we were working with on this. There is the handouts, the flowcharts, and the video, and it's available via Google. So this is an instruction sheet on how to use it that we've given to districts, and told them go ahead and click on it and start to go ahead and personalize it as they like. They have those options, as I mentioned, to use it in a lot of different technological formats based on what works for their district and their contact information. And we're going to show you what some of that looks like once the districts have done that. Okay, so in the QR code you saw at the beginning, you saw the basic of how we've presented it to them. Now on the next slide, I'll show you what it looks like from one of our districts that has done this work. Okay, so this is from Davison Early College, and you can see it's in a completely different color format, right? This is their school colors, which is the red and gold and not the blue and green that we presented the documents in. You can see that the contact person added a QR code, they added their contact information, they put a little logo and some school pictures. That's what we ask districts to do, is take it, and to do this is very quick, simple, and easy for them to do. To take it, go ahead and make it the way they want it in literally minutes, and then use this to share out with the students and the resources that they're sharing. We have another example. This is from a different district, Van Buren ISD, Intermediate School District. And this is the preferences sheet. So remember, I was telling you, like, it shows you different ways to explore what do they look like. So here, their colors are green and gray. So they changed it. They put their logo at the top, and again, another picture. And if they, for some reason, feel like one of the statements doesn't fit with their school, they can also change that. And that's an important feedback piece. One of the things that we found, and we have a slide that talks about this later, is working with some of our partners. Some of them felt like this isn't the way I want it presented, or this is the way I do want it presented, what have you. And so our message has always been, go ahead and edit this to the way that you need to for your district so that it is communicating it the way you like it communicated. This is just the simple formula foundation so that they don't have to start it from ground zero. And here's another one. This is one that's asking if EMC is a good fit and explaining what an early middle college would look like to them. So this is one of the individual overview documents. And in here, they have added some of their specific program details. If you look on the bottom of the right page, you'll see that they put in some specifics related to their program. And that's another thing that we ask them to do is like, okay, in this spot, this is where you are going to quickly and easily type in some specific notes about what you want people to know about your program. You will see in each of the overview documents, there's an FAQ section. And in those, we used some of the feedback from our empathy interview quotes and the feedback we received from students. Okay. And here's another example. And this is again, an example of a preferences document where it's showing it in a different format. So the student can say, this is what I want to do, right? I want to be prepared for college. Everybody's going to say yes to that, right? We hope if they're interested in college and high school. But as we move on, this is the first page of the document, but as you move on to other pages of this document, sometimes it might say yes for one of the items and no for the other two, so on and so forth, so that they can see, oh, this is the one that lines up with what I'm looking to do as a student. So here's the second page, and you can see here, I want to experience college level coursework. And so that's yes for early middle college, yes for dual enrollment. And in this example, no for CTE. Or another differentiation is I want to experience a more engaging learning environment. And then it talks about the number of years that they're going to be involved in taking those courses and how that's different under early middle college, CTE, and dual enrollment. So one of the things when we rolled this out is we have been doing various presentations throughout the state at multiple conferences so that we can get this messaging out to our schools. We also did announcements from both Michigan College Access Network. They did a press release, and we did a press release from Michigan Department of Education. The MDE communications come out as memos that go to every district across the state. And so we mentioned it in there. So we're really trying to share this as broadly as we can across the state so that our districts will pick it up and start using it and help us to address some of those communication challenges. One of the things that we did share with them is various ways they might want to use it. And that's what this slide here addresses, which they can use it in classroom presentations. If they go in and do presentations, they can use it for counseling meetings with students and or families. They can use it for college and career fairs, at parent nights, new student orientations, and we use a EDP software program called Zello and Naviance are the most heavily used in Michigan. There's various ones, but that they could build that into part of their education development process for the students and put that in their plan of study. So we're constantly trying to give them other examples of how schools are using it, just like we showed you how both Van Buren and Davison are using it, but also how they might want to implement it at various places throughout the student's journey. I mentioned that we had some statewide work groups that gave us some feedback. For example, I think this is an important thing to share related to CTE. we got some feedback about how they wanted the college opportunities portrayed. And so we had like a mini focus group to talk about that and say, okay, does this feel like what you think is the appropriate way to share that information? And I think that was an important and valuable component of this, so that all the various parties are feeling like they are having a voice in this and they can get behind it and relate and support the work that's ongoing. And that is another example of having the students, the parents, and the counselors give us feedback during the empathy work, and then hearing what their challenges were so that we could address those by building the communications toolkit. So if you are going to be doing this work, that's probably one of my bigger recommendations, is to make sure that you are involving all the various stakeholders so that you can make sure that you are using the similar language and developing the communications with each of those various stakeholder mindsets in mind. So if there is time, I will defer to Edith. If there is, then I thought I could go ahead and share my screen for a few minutes and just walk you through it a little bit more. And I can answer questions, but I think it's sometimes a little bit easier to do it this way. Okay, great.
And if anyone has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat and we'll answer them shortly.
So here is the toolkit, which we just showed you. And I wanted just to kind of show you how it works. So if we clicked on the Google Drive, Google Doc here, this is going to open up one of the preferences documents that we talked about. And then you can see here, this one has questions like this one also addresses, I think, which is helpful, AP and IB, which are very big as well in Michigan. So they kind of compare and contrast what those look like so that, again, students can decide, is this the fit for what I'm looking for or not? And it kind of gives an overview of them up here as well. Okay. I'm just going to show you a couple of the, I'll show you the comparison worksheet as well. So this was the one we were looking at a little bit recent, not too long ago in the presentation, that compares, I want to do this, I want to do that. And so I want to show you here, this is where we changed some of the language, even from the screenshots you saw based on feedback from Career Tech Ed. And some of our administrators in the field that said they wanted this to be reflected as, it depends, right? It depends on each individual school, if they have post-secondary credit agreements or not, if they're going to be able to do college credit while in CTE. But instead of saying no off the cuff, they wanted it to say, it's really going to be varied based on individual school decisions. Or here, this one has, again, I want to earn college credits that transfer. And then, yes, they can. And then this links to the website that allows them that opportunity to apply for college credit. So those are the kind of things that I think are helpful to get some feedback on as you go through this process and make sure that you're reflecting the stakeholder feedback. Down here are the individual documents. So I'll just click on the early middle college one to show you. And then you can see here what this looks like. And it talks about each one of them, say, is early middle college, is dual enrollment, is CTE a good fit? Because one of the things we wanted students to be able to do is to be able to decide, well, how do I know what's the right one for me? Because that's often confusing to them. Like, how do I know if I should do this versus this? So this is explaining what the differences look like and then what you get for it, right? What are you going to get if you participate in early middle college, dual enrollment, or CTE? What's it going to look like? What's that experience going to include? And here's some of those quotes I was talking about from our empathy interviews. And then why would they want to do it? And then we end with the frequently asked questions. And again, these are the spots down here where each of the early middle colleges, dual enrollment or CTE areas can personalize and put what they want for their own. And then there's a link where they're going to put their own contact information. So that's how these documents are designed. I also want to make sure I show you the PowerPoint. I think this has been very helpful to them because they were frequently having to develop individual PowerPoints. So again, they can put their school name up here. They can talk about what is college and high school. We built kind of like an overview for them. We gave them some of the statistics. And then what this presentation does is it compares and contrasts each one of these. It compares what dual enrollment is, early middle college, career tech ed, AP, and IB throughout the entire presentation. And it breaks those down by benefits. And I personally really love the little icons. I think they're like cute, and I'm a visual learner, so I like those. The financials involved, access and availability, the eligibility to participate, what it looks like for college credit and partnerships, the support that students receive participating, what the culture is going to look like for each one, how are they going to look different. And then there's these individual slides, again, we call them recap, where they should be personalizing it for their school before they present. And if they don't, they can just delete these slides. Then it talks about the success for each of them. And then we have a resources section, and we include the legislation, links to data and that type of thing. And then they can just pop in their school and contact information in order to get the students started. And hopefully, we're very excited. We literally just started rolling this out in November. So we are hopeful that we are going to see a definite increase in the student participation, looking back at that 3.5% that pretty much is dual enrollment, that similarly for early middle college, that we're going to see a growth in that as a result of sharing these communications. So what type of questions do you all have for us?
And I would add too that a lot of counselors, they wanted plug and play materials. I think that we wanted to make sure that everyone had things that they would need to have family nights, to meet with parents, to meet with students. So all of these things are meant to be plug and play. So that's why the slides are so important, because they do family nights. Now we've given them something to use for that particular thing. And then the other piece I would highlight is this like common mindset shift. There were a lot of people that had different understandings of what these programs were. And so we as a state said we need to come together and make sure that we're all messaging this the same way, for the betterment of our community, for our betterment of our regions and our schools, that it will make it easier for counselors, for administrators, for folks to talk about it if we're all using the same language. So that was a really critical piece that we got out of it, and that has been really helpful. And then I would say for the higher ed folks, so like the partners, what kind of started to happen was the higher ed partners were like, how do we get to expand our offerings in schools? How do we work on articulating credits for CTE? And so now there's a nice conversation starter that says colleges want to help high schools in saying, we'll give credits to these CTE programs, et cetera. Let's do the paperwork to get that going, knowing that it is a collective effort statewide.
And I see a question from Sarah. She's asking the key messaging, the process uncovered for you. I think one of the biggest, I don't know that it was new to us, but we just knew that it wasn't being promoted as heavily as we wanted it to be across the state. So I don't know that was uncovered, but we knew that was a challenge. So that was one of the big drivers for this project, is maybe if we make it easier for them, that they'll be more likely to share it. I think that was kind of the thought process behind it. And what are the callouts or essential points for students and families to opt in? I think for us, another big one was just explaining the differences, because it's confusing. We heard that from students as well when we were doing the interviews, is like, I don't even understand the difference. And they don't, right? Like, they're like, yeah, I want to take college classes, but like, how is that different? Like, all these terms that we're using mean something to us, but not to them. It's like, I just want to take college classes, and really doesn't matter how I'm signed up. It kind of does on our end, but not to them. So we're trying to explain to them the differences in them. And then what do we as educators assume? Yeah, I think, what do we assume they know, but actually needs more explanation? Right there, I think is the answer, is that they do not understand the difference in all of these. Like same thing with IB and AP and all of it. It's just ways to accelerate their learning. And they want to do that. We know that they want to advance, and families want to take advantage of the financial opportunities, but they don't always understand what does it look like and how are they different. And so that was a really big point of this work, is differentiating and making it clear. Even you saw that in the PowerPoint. Like,
Yeah.
here's what each one of these is and how they differ, so that they can compare and contrast what's going to be the best fit.
I would even highlight, more importantly, in the video, you'll see this explicitly called out. It's like a 2-minute video, and it has 3 scenarios of real kids who went through these programs. And it explicitly says they earned 42 credits, jumpstart on their college, finished their nursing in 3 years, got a job. So that like return on investment, or that like value proposition for families is critical. It saves this amount of money. It saves this amount of time for college. Kids finish it earlier and less expensive. So that value proposition was critical for parents. The data is often critical for parents, but also for educators, to say more kids are more successful when they're going into these programs, and their outcome in post-secondary. For parents, it's more kids are saving money and more kids are finishing earlier. So that you got to just be mindful of who the audience is to change your value proposition for those. And then Kim had a question for Stacy about early middle college.
How does that affect high school graduation rates if students are staying for an extra year? Are they taking the classes? Okay. So in Michigan, our early middle college model, and it's called around the state, it's called different, not around the state, around the nation, it's called different things. Sometimes early college, sometimes middle college. In Michigan, we've combined the 2 terms to call it early middle college. And in Michigan, our process is different. We do have it set up as a 5-year program. So students are allowed to take what we sometimes call a 5th year of high school, or grade 13. And during that 5th year, they are continuing to take high school, but really it's like they take one high school course each semester so that they still qualify as a high school student, and college classes. That high school class can actually be a college class, that the high school is just counting as a high school requirement, so that the student then still qualifies as a high school student. But really in that 5th year, they are taking college level courses. And I would say 99% of the classes are at the college. Occasionally, they might have the student come back for like a seminar, check-in kind of thing, but generally they're even doing that virtually. So it's probably 99.9%. So really the students are pretty much at the college, and the schools are just still working with them to I think the wonderful beauty of it all is they are helping to support and transition that student in a very personalized and accommodated way, so that those students are going from high school to college. That's why we have higher than any of the other options student enrollment and matriculation in college, because of that very specialized personalized support system that is built into our early middle college programs. Other things we do that help with that is we have like summer success programs, right, where they're building students up to skill level in order to move into college courses, things like that. But all of these different supports really help to make our early middle college program really successful for students, and that's a key component of it. Hope that answers your question, Kim. If there's more, I see that. I was going to ask, we're looking at a similar model, wondering about the graduation rate reporting. Yeah, I mean, graduation rate is extremely high for them. I can pull up some
Stacey, I
slides.
think the question is, if they're staying an extra year, wouldn't that negatively impact the 4-year graduation rate?
No, because then they move into a 5-year graduation cohort. Yeah, so, it's the same and generally higher because of those supports that I was talking about. Hope that answers your question, Kim, but feel free to unmute if you have more that you want to ask around And yes, Janine talked about the wraparound mentors, which is a great component of us as well, and that many of the schools have advisors and mentors that are working with the students, checking in, providing those supports that they need. I see another question from Edith.
The biggest misconception you found that high school students have the value of post-secondary education. Yes. This value proposition piece is super important, especially when you're trying to combat the mindsets and the social media and the politics that are going on now about the value of post-secondary. It's being challenged left and right. And now we as adults have to try to combat that. I think the one thing that we try to make sure we talk about is college is anything after high school, certificate, associates. So kids have this mindset that a college is going away 4 years at a place. But we have started to really talk about the word college in the fact that high school diplomas are not enough. And we even show them the unemployment rates and the money you earn when you are more educated. So again, that's that value proposition piece for kids. I think money speaks to kids, how much earnings, and then really focusing on this idea of just continuous education, continuous learning. Yeah, college is any learning after high school that leads to something tangible. And we have to really talk through this whole, in Michigan, we have a lot of people that say, oh, I'm going to trade school. In Michigan, there's not a robust trade school infrastructure. There's no trade schools. It's our community colleges. So we had to really rethink the truth about trades to say that trade schools don't exist. Apprenticeships, kids are like, I'm going to an apprenticeship. Really, what they were saying was, I'm going down the street to this mechanic who's agreeing to give me an apprenticeship. But that is not the registered apprenticeship. That is going to be value add, stackable, transferable credits and credentials, whether they stay at that place of work or not. So we try to make sure that we're having the same conversations with the manufacturing association, with the automotive association, to explain that we have to have the same messaging and that people have to honor credits so that they are transferable for a kid to go from place to place, have those credits stackable, transferable, and then it can lead to this piece of attainment, which was big time a need for us.
And I love that Aline, who's from our team, added in some of our statistics that address the previous question, that early middle college students in Michigan enroll in college within 12 months of graduating high school at a rate of 65.47%, which is 7 percentage points higher, which is that's a huge percent. I did pull up a slide with some of our data, which as long as that's okay with you, Edith, I'll share one more time, another slide.
Go for it.
So here's some of our early middle college data. I'm making sure, I don't think I'm sharing the right screen, so let me share again. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you guys can see that one. That 95% of our early middle college students feel ready to handle college classes. This is back to that supports again. They have an average college GPA of 3.10, and they are doing 51.6 college credits on average. Some are doing much more than that. Some are doing less, because one of the things that's an important thing to understand about early middle colleges in Michigan, I told you previously that it's part early college, part middle college. So some of our programs are taking students that are what you might call the high flyers, and those students are running ahead and taking a ton of college credits. And then some of them are taking the more at-risk students, and those students might not get to as high of a number of college credits, but it's still extremely important. And it actually, one of the reasons early middle colleges were started in Michigan were to help address some of our access and equity issues. And so that's an important component of this as well. I'll show you the next slide. which also just shows some of that enrollment data. Let's see if it'll let me advance to that one just to. There we go. Sorry, I'm going to show you that.
Any other thoughts, questions while we're waiting? Just, I feel like this isn't unique to Michigan Challenge. So a lot of this is challenge. I spent the majority of my adult life in Illinois working in the school system there. So I recognize this. But the one thing that I think a lot of you have that we don't have is this really robust, and I'm talking more about maybe city colleges, Chicago public schools, plus the city colleges have a really good connection there to make this more seamless. But when you think about outside of there, be thinking about where these opportunities exist within the higher ed institutions and the K-12 institutions to really support this college and high school opportunity. And if this toolkit might be your pathway to talk to high schools or to talk to colleges about what this could look like to expand some offerings, then we hope you find it definitely helpful and useful for your work.
And I see, Darlena, you had your hand
Mhm.
up, and I think what your question was about funding to support the early middle colleges. And I will say that is one of the challenges, definitely. We're always trying to find additional funding sources for them. But the main funding they do get is they get the students' FTE for that 5th year. So it requires a upfront commitment from a district because they're upfront funding a much higher level of tuition for students, more classes than they would with dual enrollment. But they get that 5th year of the student's full-time equivalency that comes back to help offset those costs that they paid in the beginning. So that's kind of the model and how we hope that they're funding it. But yes, it does require a commitment from them. Some of our community colleges have been good partners as well, and helping to fund maybe some of the staffing to launch these, that type of thing. There's a question from Kim: strong partnerships with community colleges. Yes, that's very critical. Are given the right of refusal for dual opportunity. Alex says, have you all gotten feedback from practitioners since the toolkit rolled out? Yes, we've gotten a lot of feedback from them. They are loving it, I have to say. Like, some of them have been joining us to do the presentations about this to others and talking to the colleagues out in the field. Like, this is how I'm using it and it's working great. And it's been very popular.
I'm curious how you're thinking about measuring the success of the toolkit. Have you thought about the metrics you'll track, or?
I don't know specifically about a survey related to that. That's something we haven't talked about, but might be valuable. But also, I think one of the main things I'm interested in is just to see growth in enrollment, and as a result of this, and hoping that we'll see, that was really what the goal was that we put in our blueprint, was to see increased enrollment.
Yeah, I would say there's a way to look at how many people have opened and used it, although, it can be not not always, but we check that, we look at that, and then also just the way people are customizing it and sharing it back with us. Like, you saw 2 examples of that. There are more people that are like talking about it, using it, and then we often share out what they're doing so that other people get excited about it. Um, yeah, I mean, this is definitely your material, so you have access to it. So feel free to look at it, make copies of it, rethink maybe how it might look in Illinois. And even if it's not statewide, would it be something that your district or your community, your region or your county might use? Hope that you found it meaningful and helpful to your work.
Well, thank you so much. If there are no other questions, Stacy and Janine, this has been incredible. love the really practical examples that you gave. And thank you for sharing the toolkit. And I'm sure that folks on this call will find it very useful and will be digging into it. Before we close, I just want to share a few upcoming events. On April 4th, we have the College and Career Pathway Endorsement Work Group. Please join us for that. And on April 28th, we have another webinar on building pathways to career connection and choice. So thank you all again for joining us. Janine and Stacy, really appreciate your time. And I hope that everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you all.
See you.